Dear learners, I welcome you to a very special session that is highly used and most popular among researchers, that is quantitative techniques in research methodology. We had a number of sessions on analyzing qualitative data, and at the end, we saw how we can come out with the meanings from qualitative data analysis. Worldwide, numbers are preferred and measurements are liked by every researcher, especially researchers in tourism and hospitality management. When you look at the tourism and hospitality researchers, most of the researchers come out with numbers, diagrams, tables, and a number of equations, ultimately defining relationships or proposing models and theories. In this week, we will be starting the data analysis process using quantitative techniques. So, we have seen qualitative data analysis in the past week. We have a number of sessions dealing with different type of statistical techniques used in quantitative research. So, dear learners, once again, I welcome you all to another module of research methodology for tourism and hospitality management. In this week, we are going to discuss quantitative data analysis in detail. This involves study of the data, number one, designing the scheme of analysis, that is number two. We will study about frequency distribution, descriptive statistics, data reduction techniques, test of association, test of relationships in a brief way. Don't worry, I'm going to teach you about the details of statistics. We will take some examples and using softwares like SPSS, Strata, Jamovi, R, Python, we can get the meanings very easily. So get ready for a journey of quantitative data analysis. In this particular module, I will start with what is data, how you can prepare your data for analysis. That is what the foundations that we'll be discussing today. In quantitative researches, the researcher use survey data or secondary data which is in large numbers. So how we can go ahead with analysis? At very first, we should understand that the data that we are collected, how it is going to impact the study, it completely depends upon the quality of the data. So as a researcher, when you collect primary data, you have complete expectation that the data that you collected will help you to get to the desired outcomes. Is it so? Not in all cases. In my past research experience, in some context, the data which I collected was not useful. There would be several reasons. Let us focus on the topic. So, a researcher designed questionnaire, and this questionnaire contain a number of questions. Most of the questions are close-ended, and it could be dichotomous questions or measuring the levels or measuring agreements. So these questions in term we use to indicate by variables. So let us see minutely how this data that we collected are prepared before we go for analysis. Data preparation is very important part of analysis that you have already seen. So the variables which we can divide, that is one is categorical and second one is continuous. For example, I have a question that ask name, the name of an individual. So it does it have any meaning when we do quantitative analysis? Generally, no. So we can put it as a nominal variable. Second, when we ask the age group, the individual is falling. That is below 30 years or 31 to 50 years, above 50 years. There are three categories. This categorical information, here we can say order you can put, that is the ordinal data. Similarly, we have interval and ratio data. What time it takes you to reach the office, how much time and how much money. So this in numbers which is specified, 10 kilometers, that is the distance from my home to the office. I pay 50 rupees towards the auto charges. So we have numbers coming here. So these numbers help us, and this is called a continuous. The numbers which are decimal or which are in discrete form, these are continuous variables. So in a questionnaire, we will have categorical data as well as continuous data. So when we collect the data, I told you normally we use questionnaires, and these questionnaires are divided into different sections and subtitles. This questionnaire checking is the first part of your analysis process. So what we are checking? We are checking the questionnaire and grouping some items. Then we try to code the data, and then we have to change some variables, clean the data, and we have to identify an appropriate strategy for analysis. These all steps are very important part of data analysis. A researcher should be well prepared when the data analysis process begins. However, data can be problematic. Do you know, in many cases, we get incomplete questionnaires. The respondents may not pay attention to fill the questionnaire completely. There could be also missing information. In some cases, you find no variation is presented in the data. The responses showing a one dimension. Some questionnaire, they do not even unanswer. Reviewing the questionnaire is important because it improves the accuracy. Now we come to know about another term that we use, missing value. The data which is incomplete, or the respondent forget to tick, or maybe ignored, and is it randomly scattered? Learners, the entire success of your research work depend upon getting good data from the field. So when you go to the field and when you interact with the respondents, conducting interviews are somewhat easier. But when you have a questionnaire with multiple pages, the respondent, they may not pay adequate attention to fill the data. There would be different context and situations. Some occasions, the respondent may feel that you are entering into their private space. They are here for a holiday or a vacation. And as an intruder, you are taking their time and you want your work to be done. So in some cases, the respondents may skip some questions consciously or sometimes unconsciously. If the questionnaire is having multiple pages, there are possibilities of omission. And in some cases, you may find a section is completely blank. So to address this, statisticians or experts in research, they propose various measures. So first aspect is, when we get the data, we have to check for errors, we have to check for missing values. I find these days many researchers collect the data through Google Form. In Google Form, there is one advantage. If you click mandatory answering, the respondent has to attend all the sections. So you can avoid the issue of missing values. But it is not possible in many cases. If you don't get the response, what you will do? So these days, people do not spare much time unless until they know you or they feel it is worthy to spend time for filling the questionnaire. So let us proceed to the next phase. Look at this table. I have taken an example. It is a hypothetical example. I have given 10 numbers in the beginning that indicates ID. That means I have given ID number or serial number to the questionnaire. The respondent's age is presented in the second column. Gender is specified in third column. Like that, monthly income is in the fourth. Employment features, that is on the fifth. Marital status next. So what are the variables here? Age, gender, income, employment, marital status. So see, in the row wise and column wise, you can find missing values. Let us take the example of row number 1. Can you see any missing values here? Row wise? No. That is why the percentage is here 0. Look at ID number 3. It is colored with red font. You can only find 3 answers, 3 variables answered by the respondent. Gender and income skipped. So, total number of missing values 2. And it constitute almost 40%. Similarly, in fourth, you find that 2 answers were skipped. 2 variables are not found in the data, 40%. So, when you calculate in total, you find there are 8 items, 8 variables which are incomplete. And then you calculate with the total. That means row total and column total. So you will find out of 100, there are around, if you take the column total and row total, then identify the percentage of missing values. You can either remove this or find the alternative. To, at times you have to remove several responses. We will see it in the coming slides, how to address this matter. The second step involved in preparing your data is coding. In qualitative research, we use the term coding. But in quantitative, it is slightly different. Go through this example I have presented. How many variables that we study, and each variable is given with a specific sub answers. So 1, 2 or 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. Right? These are the number codes which you can enter in Excel sheet or SPSS softwares. So this, instead of writing mail, or when you find the Google form which indicates that mail, you can convert it in number so that the analysis process will become easy. So coding the data, whether it is categorical variable, nominal or ordinal variable, it is important. If it is continuous variable, you can group. So while you group, for example, I asked age. Somebody gave me a reply of 35. Somebody gave me a reply of 25. Again 38. Say 24. This is falling in one group and the next one is falling in another group. So while you are making the order arrangement, that is, this is number 1, this is number 2, it become a categorical variable. So coding the data is the second phase after you check missing values. The next process is scaled items. We can find that in PhD research, especially quantitative research, we have to use scales. Scale item here means the number of sub items which falls under a major construct. So motivation is the construct here. Under motivation, I have mentioned sightseeing, that is one of the variable, and the second one is shopping, that is variable 2, and health, variable 3. So I have given a code that MOT1, MOT2, MOT3. So these all directly fall under motivation. Then I also added another term, total is N, the numbering process. N1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, which you find in the last part. So this is in continuation to the previous slide. You have to understand that while we use scales are given with different names. The items which we import for our study, we have to properly code it, and we have to also number it, because it will help you in the next phase of your study. So when we complete the coding process, next phase is data cleaning. So data cleaning involves a number of steps. Here your eyes should look into such columns and rows where you find inconsistencies in the data. Inconsistencies, maybe at times, there could be several human error happened while you enter the data. In the early phase of my research, we used to print questionnaire, and this questionnaire was distributed among the tourist or the respondent group. When I get it back, the very first thing I used to do is number the whole questionnaires. Here it means ID. So I created an ID for each questionnaire. And in the second phase, I do data entry, that is in MS Excel. So when you get exhausted with work, you get bored also. Doing data entry is not easy. Instead of 1, sometimes by mistake I put 11. Or sometimes instead of 2, it could be 22. Or sometimes missing. So we have to be careful. This particular process is called data cleaning. So identifying inconsistencies, identify the missing data from the sheet, the spreadsheet that you are using, and then the process of replacing missing value, that normally we use a technique, data imputation or case-wise deletion, or at times pair-wise deletion. So deletion means delete it, remove it. So case-wise or pair-wise, it depends upon the number of responses that we have. If we have large sample size, it is advisable to remove pairwise. But before that, there are other issues also to be verified. So let us go into the next phase. One point to note here is variable respecification. Variable respecification means creating summative scales. So this example given here is attitude. Attitude towards a particular work, or attitudes towards a tour, or attitude towards a food. So how many items are there in the scale? There are 3 items. 1, 2 and 3. So what I have to do is I have to create a summative scale. So instead of having three different variables, I have to represent it by one. So what did I did? I have added attitude 1, attitude 2, attitude 3 and divided by the number, the average, that is 3. For example, I am telling attitude towards food, very high, moderate, low. Okay, you can put the numbers 1, 2 or 3. So attitude towards, next you say shopping, similarly very high, moderate or low. Attitude towards partying, very high, moderate, low. So these levels of measurement. Imagine that one respondent has given attitudes towards three items we have taken. One is food, the second one is shopping, and the third one is partying. So food, he has the respondent has given 1, shopping 2, partying 1. So what is the sum of these three? 3, that is 4. 4 and 3 divided by 3, somewhere in between 1.2 or 1.3 it comes. The summative score will be the average of the 3 score, then that particular score will be used for analysis. I hope you understand. In some cases we use dummy variables. Dummy variables are used normally in regression. And when we use dummy variables, we only have two answers represented by 0 and 1. So this is why, to complete the analysis process, dummy variables are used. Next one is scale transformation. See, in a scale, to understand the right perspective of a respondent, we may use negative sentences to make sure that the individual really meant that or not. For example, I like shopping. Then I measured it, strongly agree, strongly disagree, or strongly like agree or disagree, no opinion, 5-point scale. In the next, after some questions, I wanted to check whether I am consistent with I like shopping or not. So here I add a question. I hate time spending in shopping. Okay, just imagine 2 sentences. First question is, I like shopping. So if a respondent, he is casual, he says strongly agree, I like shopping. And second, if in the next question he didn't pay much attention, the question was like this. Now, I hate time in spending shopping time. So there also the respondent has given strongly disagree. The answer is inconsistent. If the person like shopping, then the individual, he or she should also like the time spent for shopping. So these negative sentences we have to rephrase, or we have to reverse the scale. That is called reversal of the scale. The table presented in this slide, which shows standardizing values. For example, I told you we use strongly disagree, strongly agree, like Likert type scale in many contexts. So when we get to the data which is almost like confusing at times. To make it standardized, researchers use a strategy. To identify Z value, we have to calculate it using a formula. So here the mean value of the whole distribution is deducted with the standard deviation, and we can identify the Z value. So the process of correcting the data is, we can say, standardization. So when we have seen the value given here, for example, agree, statement, agreement. 5, strongly agree. So when you enter this 10 IDs, there are variations of answers. So when you enter this value in Excel, there is an option to identify standardized value. It will ask for the mean value of the entire score. Then we have to identify the standard deviation, and then each value in each column which is tested, and you will get the final score, Z score. So this is also useful outcome for analysis. So calculation with a standardized score is advised to get precise results at times. In the coming segment, we will study statistical techniques which are broadly divided into univariate and multivariate. Univariate means measuring the single element in a sample. So uni means single. So univariate, bivariate and multivariate. These are the 3 different way we can do statistical analysis. And we have data which is collected in the form of metric data and non-metric data. Non-metric data, I told you, nominal or ordinal scale. Metric data, that is measured on interval or ratio scale. Now we have independent variables and independent samples. We have dependent variables. Then we have another kind of sample called paired samples. 2 different sample set taken from the same group of respondents, maybe before or after a certain event. So the terms that you study, once again, univariate, that means a single measurement that you have to use, you have to test only the height of the individual. IQ score, or you say weight. In a population, you check the height, what extent it varies, or the IQ score of 100 students. So when it become, you're measuring 2 things, 2 different cases, metric variables, it become bivariate. Multivariate involves more than 2. There are 3 or more variables when we use appropriate techniques for multivariate analysis. The techniques are divided into 2, that is dependence and interdependence. So I recommend the book Naresh Malhotra for the students at a PG and PhD level to get the details how to proceed with quantitative data analysis scheme. So dear scholars, let us see a graphical presentation of the kind of data and the type of statistical test that will be helpful for getting insight about the data analysis. Remember, I used the term metric data and non-metric data. Metric data, you have different levels, or you have specific number which represent a variable that is a continuous variable. Here we have one sample. Remember the name of the statistical test, t-test or z-test. 2 or more samples with a metric variable, we use t-test, z-test or one-way ANOVA if we are testing the independence, or we are testing the related samples, we use paired t-test. Dear learners, don't get confused or get panicked after going through the name of this test. When you use software, these are very simple. My intention is not to teach you the equation, to give you an outcome, to give you an outline on how easily we can use this test while we do statistical data analysis. The second category is non-metric. Here we have a number of tests that is ranging from frequency, very easy, you remember percentages and counting, chi-square test, ks test, runs and binomial. When we have two or more samples to study, one is again, if they are independent, chi-square test is there, we have Mann-Whitney U-test is there, we can check the median, we can take the KS test, or if they are related samples, there is Wilcoxon, McNamara, and again chi-square we can use. This diagram is very important for every researcher. We have multivariate technique. In multivariate technique, again we have dependence technique and interdependence technique. If there is one dependent variable, we can use crosstab, ANOVA, regression. We can use discriminant analysis, logit analysis, or conjoint analysis. So what we in the coming sessions, we will have a view on the results and how to interpret this result. We will not go detail because it needs an exhaustive workshop. We have to spend a lot of time if you are a fresher and if you don't have much idea on statistics. Dependent techniques with more than one dependent variable, that is multivariate analysis we call in general, with canonical correlations, multiple discriminant analysis, or structural equation modeling, path analysis. These all are statistical tests used when we have more than one dependent variable. There are some other analysis which we can use in quantitative data analysis. Number one is factor analysis, that is EFA, exploratory factor analysis. Second one is confirmatory factor analysis. Then similarity. To identify the similarity, we can use cluster or multidimensional scaling. So see the previous slide, it was about univariate. We have two types of data, metric data and non-metric. And we have samples, one sample, two sample, like that. Here we have multivariate techniques with the dependence technique or interdependence technique. Here the issue is one is on dependent variable and second case is the object similarity or object interdependence. So some example which I am saying. See the items in the questionnaire which I shared you earlier. Here what we can do, one is counting, very easy job. When we get 100 questionnaires filled up, we can very easily identify age, gender, like that, and present in the form of numbers. You also know how to calculate the frequency in form of percentage. Imagine 50 boys and 50 girls. This is 50% exactly. 60, 40. 60%, 40%. So that is number one. Number two, we can compare variables and, for example, age or gender. You must have seen like tables which say one is age group and second one is gender. The term that we use here is cross tabulation. And the last aspect is hypothesis testing. So hypothesis testing we can do to see the association or fit, goodness of fit, using chi-square. So are you confused at the end? Some of you may be feeling that we are entering problematic zone. No, not at all. I guarantee you an easy learning process. In the coming modules, we will be covering some examples. I'll give you specific example and how we can understand the outcome of such analysis. Let me wrap up what we discussed today. We started with data and we have seen how important is data preparation And we also saw the type of variable that we have in our questionnaire matters a lot in data analysis. And we have seen a number of examples with a hypothetical questionnaire. At the end of this module, we have seen different type of statistical test and the statistical analysis which are part of the quantitative research and data analysis. I request you to spend considerable time. One is to have a basic understanding of statistics, and second, go through the research methodology books which give sufficient examples of cases where you can have a secondary learning by referring these books. So I also advise you to refer Naresh Malhotra, who authored Marketing Research, and it will be highly helpful for you. With this, I wind up today's session. If you have any doubts, kindly come back to me. Thank you.